I am 78 years old now, and when I say that out loud, it still surprises me a little. Not because the number feels wrong, but because I didn't expect to be here saying it. At 72, sitting on a paper covered exam table with my feet dangling like a child's, I was told I had cancer. The word landed quietly. No drama, no ringing in my ears. Just a heavy, dull certainty that something had ended, even if my body was still breathing. I live alone now. The house is too big, but I know every sound it makes. At night, when the heat clicks on or the pipes sigh, I think about how close I came to not hearing any of it again. Time feels different when you realize how easily it could have stopped. I wasn't always someone who thought much about endings. For most of my life, I believed things would simply continue. Not perfectly, not happily all the time, but forward. I assumed there would always be another season to fix things, another year to rest, another chance to pay attention. That assumption shaped everything. In my 20s, I married a man who was steady and decent and a little distant. That seemed enough back then. We were practical people. We paid our bills, we showed up to work. We didn't talk much about feelings because there was always something else to do. I told myself that was adulthood. We had 2 children. I loved them deeply, but quietly. I packed lunches, washed clothes, signed permission slips. I believed love was proven through consistency, not presence. I thought as long as I kept things running, everything would be fine. I worked for 35 years at the same office. Nothing glamorous, I was good at it, dependable, the kind of woman people trusted with details and deadlines. I stayed late when asked. I filled in when others were sick. I told myself I was needed. At home, the days blurred. Dinner at 6, television at 8, sleep, repeat. When my husband and I talked, it was usually about logistics, groceries, repairs, the kids' schedules. I noticed the quiet growing between us, but I didn't question it. Quiet felt safe. Looking back, I see how often I delayed things that mattered. Trips we never took, conversations we never finished, apologies that stayed in my throat because there would be time later. There always seemed to be time later. The kids grew up faster than I expected. One day they were asking for help with homework, and the next they were calling from apartments that didn't have room for me. I was proud of them. I still am. But pride doesn't fill a kitchen at night. My husband died when I was 67, heart attack. Quick, they said. Merciful, they said. I remember standing in the hospital hallway afterward, holding my purse like it was the only solid thing left. I realized then how little we had said to each other at the end, how much we had assumed. After that, the house became very quiet. Friends checked in at first, then less often. I filled my days with routines because routines don't ask questions. I told myself I was fine. At 72, I went to my annual checkup mostly out of habit. I felt tired, but I was old. Tired came with the territory. The tests were just boxes to check. When the doctor called me back in, she closed the door gently. That's what I remember most, the gentleness. She explained things carefully, using words that were supposed to soften the blow. Early, but aggressive. Treatment options, decisions. I nodded like I understood, but my mind had already drifted somewhere else. I was thinking about my kitchen table, about the plant I always forgot to water, about how strange it was that the world didn't stop when you were told something like that. That night, I sat alone on my bed and stared at the wall. I didn't cry. I felt embarrassed, oddly enough, as if I had failed at something private, as if my body had betrayed a contract I didn't remember signing. The decision came later, not in the doctor's office, not during the explanations. It came in the quiet, ordinary hours afterward, the ones where you're forced to listen to your own thoughts because there's nothing else to distract you. The doctors recommended an aggressive treatment plan, surgery followed by months of therapy that would likely leave me exhausted, sick, and changed. They were honest about the risks. They were also honest about my age. I remember thinking how easy it would be to say no, to tell myself I had lived enough, to choose comfort over struggle. There was a part of me that wanted permission to stop. What stopped me wasn't courage. It wasn't a sudden love for life. It was something smaller and harder to admit. I realized how much of my life I had spent waiting for things to slow down, waiting for the right moment, waiting for permission, and suddenly there was no later left to wait for. I thought about all the choices I'd postponed because they felt inconvenient, all the days I showed up physically but not fully. I wasn't afraid of dying as much as I was afraid of leaving without ever having truly chosen anything for myself. So I said yes, not bravely, not confidently. I said yes because I didn't want my last act to be another delay. The surgery was harder than I expected. Recovery was lonely. Friends offered help, but I hated needing it. I had always been the reliable one, the helper. Letting people see me weak felt like another kind of loss. The treatments after that were worse. I lost my hair. I lost my appetite. Some days I lost track of who I was outside of appointments and medications. There were mornings I woke up and had to remind myself why I was doing this. What surprised me was how much memory surfaced during that time. Lying awake at night, I replayed moments I hadn't thought about in decades. Little things, a chance to speak up that I didn't take, an afternoon I rushed through because I was busy, a look from my husband that I ignored because it felt complicated. Cancer has a way of stripping life down to essentials. When your body is fighting, everything else gets quieter. In that quiet, I finally listened. I realized how much of my loneliness was self-made. Not because I didn't love people, but because I kept myself slightly removed, useful, reliable, but never fully present. I had confused being needed with being known. There was a turning point, though I didn't recognize it at the time. Halfway through treatment, I landed back in the hospital with an infection. I remember drifting in and out, aware enough to know things weren't going well. I thought, very calmly, that this might be it. And instead of fear, what I felt was regret. Not about death, about how carefully I had lived it, as if preserving myself mattered more than experiencing anything deeply. When I recovered from that setback, something shifted. I started making small, almost invisible changes. I let myself be honest when people asked how I was. I called my children, not just to check in, but to talk, really talk. Sometimes it was awkward, sometimes it was quiet, but it was real. I finished treatment thinner, slower, and more fragile than before. But I was also clearer. There are things you can't fix after a certain point. You can't go back and sit longer at a table where everyone has already stood up. Some relationships never returned to what they were. Some friends had faded too far. My husband was still gone. Time did not rewind itself out of courtesy. What cancer gave me, strangely, was finality. The understanding that this part of my life was not a rehearsal, that whatever time remained was not guaranteed to be generous. I don't live differently in big dramatic ways now. I still wake up early, I still drink my coffee the same way, but I pay attention. When someone speaks, I listen without planning my reply. When I feel joy, I let it stay without brushing past it. I also allow myself sadness without rushing to justify it. There is grief in knowing how much was missed. There is also gratitude in knowing I noticed before it was completely over. If you're listening to this, I won't tell you what to do. I spend too long ignoring advice myself. I'll only say this: don't assume time is patient. It isn't cruel, but it isn't waiting either. The decision that saved me wasn't just choosing treatment, it was choosing not to drift anymore. Even now, at 78, I still have to remind myself of that. Old habits don't disappear quietly. Some mornings I sit by the window and feel the sun on my face. I think about how close I came to not having this moment. It doesn't make me heroic, it makes me careful. I don't know how much time I have left. None of us really do. But I know this: I am here, and I am present in a way I wasn't before. And for now, that is enough. If this meant something to you, I'm glad you stayed and listened. That matters more than you might think.